Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I know I say this all the time that I have a special guest and that I'm so excited, but I am really, really, really excited because I do have really, really a special guest. I want you to meet the amazing Russell Rowland. Hey, Russell.
Hello, so good to see you. I'm so happy to be on your show.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So, Russell was one of my very, very first writing coaches. And he helped me get my first three books published. He was right there with me every step of the way. And I also met amazing people in his workshops who are continue to be friends. So it's just been a wonderful relationship that I'm really happy with. And now he has a new book out. So he's very prolific, lots of books. But he has a brand new one that came out in January that I had pleasure of reading and reviewing. It's called Be a Man, Raised in the Shadow of Cowboys. And he tackles some really hard things, but he does it with grace. So I want you to hear what I wrote about his book. I loved reading this engrossing, sad, funny memoir by a talented writer. I've had the pleasure of reading his excellent novels and started this new work with great expectations. Roland writes with honesty, painting a picture of his youth that it stayed with me. So I'm saying it'll stay with you. After the book is finished, he grabs his readers from the first page and he doesn't let go. So you're here to
Thank you
talk
so
about,
much.
yes, so we're here to talk about this. So why did you decide? What what went through your mind? I should write a memoir.
The main impetus for it was because I grew up in a ranching family in Montana, although we only lived on a ranch for a couple of years, but we had my grandparents were on a ranch and just the whole mentality of that, I think had a huge impact on me, and it has a huge impact on a lot of people who grow up in Montana and other rural areas. So, it had a pretty profound impact on me. I ended up becoming an alcoholic. I had anger issues, and you know, um, after years of trying to sort through all that and figure out a way to live with these things that um, I struggled with, I just thought it was important to write about it in a way that was sort of explored how a lot of that came about from my upbringing here in Montana, not to blame people, but just to explore what it is about this place that makes it so difficult for people to talk about what's really happening in their lives, because that was a huge part of what caused my drinking and my anger, was that I never learned to cope with disappointment or anger or sadness or hurt, those kinds of things. So, yeah, I had to kind of learn a whole new language just to be able to get through life.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
thought it was important to talk about that.
So what is it about growing up in a rural place or growing up on a ranch in Montana that you think causes, or I know you're not trying to blame people, but
Yeah.
what's the relationship there between the things that happened to you and growing up, you know, in Montana?
Yeah. Well, I think the main sort of common denominator for all of the families that came here and endured and managed to survive was that there was just this sort of common knowledge and understanding that life was hard for everybody. So you don't complain. Nobody wants to hear you have to be optimistic, you have to be positive, you always have to be looking for the bright side, the silver cloud or whatever, silver lining, I guess. So it was just this ingrained message that, don't bother people with your problems. And,
Mm.
even when I got to the point where I knew I needed help, it was hard for me to ever open up to anybody about anything because that was so drummed into me from early on. And I think it's just a common, everybody from my grandparents' generation had lost a child. So, it wasn't unusual. It wasn't people didn't consider it as much of a tragedy as they would now. So yeah, that's the crux of it, really.
Yeah, yeah. So you tell some hard truths in this book. And I'm wondering how the discussion with your family went, or if there was a discussion, did you tell them what you were doing? Did they get to read and say, "Don't you dare put that in"? Or kind of how did that part go?
Well, I don't know if this was the right thing to do, but I did not um, run most of it by people beforehand because I know it's hard and I know it's going to be painful for a lot of people.
Mm.
Um, and I was especially nervous about my mother, who's still alive. She's 89. About her reading it, and when I gave it to her, I told her, I think this is going to be hard for you. And it has been. She has read it. She's reading it for the second time.
Mm.
And so we've had some really great discussions about the parts that are about her. And of course, a lot of her concern is about how her friends are going to think of some of the stuff that happened in our family. But, you know, uh, I felt like it was important to just give an honest assessment of the whole story because it just I think I consider it a cautionary tale as far as like giving people a reason to take a hard look at their lives and think about doing things differently or getting help for issues they might have.
Yeah, asking for help, you know, that was a big thing in the Caribbean culture too. That
Mm.
you do not ask for help and you don't. I remember my mother-in-law saying to me, she says, "Why are you paying somebody to listen to you complain?" She says, "Just call me up. You can complain and give me the money." She was very, very outdone that I had gone to see a psychologist, right? So I'm sticking with hard truths and sticking with I can remember writing and tears rolling down my cheeks. I can remember reading and tears. How did you handle the emotions that stirred up just by the writing and of the memoir?
It took me 20 years to write this book, off
Mm.
and on. I started working on it a long time ago. So a lot of it was just time and a lot of therapy. Writing about, especially about my behavior with my first wife. I was in an abusive marriage, and that was such a struggle to, first of all, to understand how I ever became that person because it wasn't something that was part of my makeup. I didn't believe that it's okay. So, I couldn't understand how I got there, and I definitely couldn't stop. So, the shame about that was very hard to overcome. And like I said, I've done years of therapy, so eventually I was able to get there. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, hard stuff. So you're a popular author. You have so many fans. Have you gotten any reaction from your fandom? Have you heard anything other than me?
So it's only been a month, maybe a month and a half.
Hmm.
So I'm actually kind of nervous about how little response I've gotten, but I think it's partly one of those books that you don't really just sit down and read straight through because the chapters are all kind of short and um, there's a lot to it. So I think it's one of those slow books, but I also think that the what's happening in the country right now is having an impact too. Like people are a little distracted with other stuff right now. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
let it go, but it's been kind of hard to just wait and see, wondering
yeah.
what people think. Mostly it's been positive though.
Yeah, I thought I love the short chapters, and I think that the short chapters gave the story breathing room.
Hmm.
Because there'd be a scene that's heart-wrenching or making you stop and think, but because the chapters were short, it gave you that little pause, but it also read like a novel. That you did want to keep going and see what's going to happen next. So I think the short chapters really lent itself to this book, um, very, very much. And I hope everybody, all your fans, are going to see this and they're going to say, "Oh my goodness, we have to hurry up and get Russell's book." So the last thing just about the book, because then I want to shift and talk about some of the other aspects of your life. But so now somebody has read it. They've taken the book and they've read it. And maybe they don't live in a rural community, or they like me, they live someplace that's more cityfied. And what would you want the average reader, the everyday reader who picks this book up because they know you or because it's intriguing to them? What do you want them to think or feel or do as a result of reading your book?
Really, it breaks down some of the stereotypes about being a white male, no matter what segment of the population you're part of. I think there's a definite pressure to fulfill a certain role in society as a
Mhm.
man, um, and particularly white men. I think it's we've been used to being the experts, the mansplainers for all these years that, I think we expect ourselves to have all the answers and it's just too much. It's too much to ask. And I think anybody who grows up in this country has probably struggled to some point, at some point, to some degree, with just learning how to express themselves, their emotions.
Yeah. And maybe this will help the women who love them as well,
Right.
right?
I hope
By
so.
reading
Yeah.
it and giving them a chance to have a conversation.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So
Maybe give them a kick
they,
in the butt too. Get some help.
yes, yes. Let's go and let's go do it together. I also believe
All
in
right.
couples therapy. I actually
Absolutely.
went to couples therapy with my brother.
Mm, that's great.
So the therapist was quite surprised that we were brother and sister, but finding a couples therapist seemed to us like the most logical way for us to take care of all of the stuff that was going on, right? I'm a believer. So one of the things that I loved about you as a teacher, because that's how I met you. I met you at a workshop, and you were my teacher, and I met you online. I didn't see your face or anything. And then over the years, I've been in many workshops with you. I was a slow learner, and one of the things I loved about being your student is what seemed to me was the joy you took in our progress, and then success. And not everybody, success is defined different ways for different people, but it was the progress that you seemed to take such joy that we were getting better, that we were getting stronger and stuff. So I just like to know kind of what you enjoyed most about teaching writing.
You were not a slow learner to but I've always been grateful that I ended up. So we started with the Gotham classes, which is where I
Mhm.
first met you. It's been like 20 years almost now, hasn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I was at a point in my life where my first novel had come out and it was with a major publisher. So I was kind of full of myself and thinking that this was going to be my life from now on, being, um, fit, honored by these anyway. So when that didn't happen, I actually took the teaching gig because I needed the money, and I wasn't exactly thrilled about it, but I found that I loved the process so much. And like you said, watching people like you, I mean, it's just been such a joy to watch you put out book after book. One of the things I loved about you from the start was that you have this incredible optimism and persistence that I think are two of the main ingredients that you need to be successful as a writer. So watching other people practice those things, because those don't come naturally to me. So I feed off of people like you, and I
Mhm.
learn from people like you. I mean, that's one of the my favorite parts about it. I consider myself as much of a student in these workshops as I am a teacher. So that's been a great gift.
That's how I think about. I've been a teacher all my, not writing, but been a teacher most of my career, of helping people get better at their trade. And I always feel like I've learned something from my students every single time. And I think if you
Yeah.
go into something with that curiosity instead of that lack of
Mhm.
humility, right?
Yeah, like I'm the expert.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not the expert, and that's been a gift to be able to go in there with the attitude that I'm not the expert. I'm here to learn as much as you are. So
Yeah, but you're a really, really good teacher. You're a really good
thank you.
teacher. So, has there been someone who taught you? Is there a writer or an author or a book that's had like
Mhm.
a big impact on you as a writer?
Yeah, it's kind of an obscure book that maybe not a lot of people know about, but when I was in graduate school, I read somebody recommended Mrs. Bridge to me. Evan Connell was I think he was from Missouri, and he wrote Mrs. Bridge in the 50s. It's a novel about basically based on his family. And the thing that was kind of revolutionary for me about it was that it's episodic. It doesn't have a straightforward linear narrative.
Hmm.
So I learned from him that you don't have to fill in all these gaps between each chapter and sort of lead the reader by the hand.
Mm,
You can give them a snippet from these people's lives and then just jump ahead to something completely unrelated, and you don't have to explain or figure out a way to make that transition smooth. They'll do that themselves. I mean, readers are smart enough to fill in those blanks. So
wow.
that was a book that really impacted me a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah, wow. I don't know that book, but now you've
It's an amazing book.
got
And
me intrigued.
they made a great movie out of it. Merchant Ivory made a movie with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward called Mr.
Ooh,
and Mrs. Bridge, based on there was another novel, Mr. Bridge, and it's an excellent movie too.
and two wonderful actors.
Yeah.
That sounds good. That sounds like I love reading a book and then watching a movie about it. So I can be
Yeah.
mad at the movie. But
Yeah.
So, one of the things we like to do is recommend a recent reading to our audience. Is there something that you're reading now that you've just read that you think our audience might enjoy?
So I have to confess, I've been in a bit of a slump
Mm.
reading. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you ever go through this, but I've had
Yep.
such a hard time finishing books lately. But I started a new podcast recently where I'm interviewing some authors from the publisher that published my last book. And this book here, Before the Mango Ripens, is by a Nigerian author, and it's a finalist for oh shoot, I can't think what the award is. But the other finalists include Percival Everett, the James guy that wrote James, and Tommy
Mhm.
Orange. So
Mm.
she's in good company. And I'm not that far into it yet, but the writing is just luscious. So I'm looking
Oh,
forward to it.
thank you. Could you show it to us one more time?
Yeah,
I know she'll
it's a
appreciate it.
beautiful cover too.
It is a beautiful cover. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been a beautiful conversation. And I know that
Thank
people
you.
are going to want to be in touch with you. They want to buy, you want to buy his books. That's what you want to do, and you want to write reviews for sure. And you can find them any place that you buy books and any place that you borrow books. But in addition to that, how can people be directly in touch with you?
Yeah, I just have a website under my name, russellrowland.com. It's got my podcast on it and access to all the books, and my Substack is also on there. I have a Substack now, so yeah.
And you have a flourishing Facebook page too, right? With lots and lots of writers,
I
or
do
that's
have a
personal.
yeah, that's personal, but yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
do have a lot of friends on there.
But then we won't talk about that. We will go to his website. And on his website, you can find his podcast, you can find his services, you can find his books. And when you do contact him through his website, please tell him that you met him on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great week, everybody. And you too, Russell. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, everybody.